Good morning, colleagues. I welcome you. Good morning, Koge. Please confirm if you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can.
Good. So good morning. Good morning. I'm so excited to be here this morning and welcome you all for joining this webinar. My name is Timothy Odion, and I'm the membership coordinator of the Nigerian network of NGO. And there is no better place that I want to be this morning than to be in this webinar. And this webinar, we are doing it, we're organizing it in partnership with RSH. How did we come, how did this partnership come about? We had, some time ago, we were in the kind of surfing through the internet, and we got to meet this organization who are experts in safeguarding. As you know that we are a membership-based organization, and we have members cut across the 36 states of the Federation. But this whole very important issue is where we are not strong at. And now that we are seeing an expert, RSH, Nigeria, expert that has expertise in this area of safeguarding, we thought it would be a good thing for members in the network to benefit from this partnership on this issue of safeguarding, because it affects everyone, especially the work that we do as NGOs. You know, we travel a lot, we use hotel a lot, and we also engage and also involve with different kind of people. Remember a few weeks ago, something happened in Borno State where even an NGO, a member of NGO, abused a lady, and that led the lady to commit suicide. So while we are looking at our own back, we at the same time also need to put system in place to ensure that those we are working for and those we are working with are safe. Co-chair with me in this webinar is Dr. Eliana Wadinobi. She is a senior advisor at Nigeria RSH and international president, Medical Women's International Association. Dr. Eliana, you're welcome to this webinar.
Oh, thank you so very much, my co-chair, Mr. Timothy Odion. Before we start the webinar proper, allow me to share a few housekeeping points. First of all, you are all on mute with your videos turned off. This is to support with the quality and connection of the webinar. Second, if you have any issues with technology or otherwise, you can write to us in the chat function and one of us will help you. Please be aware that we will be recording this webinar to share on the NNNGO listserv afterwards for anyone who was not able to join us today. Your names will not be visible. Today's webinar will be looking at Safeguarding 101, Introduction to Safeguarding. The aim of the webinar is to provide an overview of safeguarding, including sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. The webinar will introduce CSOs like yourselves to safeguarding journey by providing an introduction and general overview of safeguarding, how to assess and plan for safeguarding, what is needed, and what to do if there is a challenge. In order to do this, our esteemed attendees, we have invited a speaker who will talk us through the key points of the topic, Safeguarding 101. Our speaker today is no other than Oge Chukwudozie. Oge is a safeguarding/protection expert with over 15 years experience in the aid sector. She has worked with different organizations in different roles but her passion lies with safeguarding. She is currently the National Associate of the Nigeria Resource and Support Hub. Now, if during the presentation you would like to ask any question, you can find the Q&A function in your controls panel at the bottom of your screen. You can add new questions or upvote any existing questions, and we will answer them at the end. The chat will also remain open, so please add your comments or share your experience in the chat. With that, it is with great pleasure, immense pleasure, that I invite our panelists for today. Oge Chukwudozie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Eleno. I'm quite happy to be in this session, in this webinar, to talk through the diverse membership of NNNGO, like fondly called. Safeguarding really is an area of interest to me because I believe that it's essential, it's important that as NGOs especially, that we are doing good to people. We are out there to help people. We on our own, both looking at our staff, volunteers, all the programs we design should not cause further harm to the people we are serving. So we will be taking you through this topic, Safeguarding 101, like introduction to safeguarding, like the basics, the founding process for safeguarding. With that, we'll now build on subsequently. Next slide, please, Sylvia. All right, so first, let's discuss so that you will know more what RSH, Safeguarding Resource and Support Hub. Some of you might be hearing about us for the first time. Some have already engaged. So RSH really is an FCDO-funded program that aims to support, organizations, small organizations in the aid sector, both humanitarian and development, to strengthen their safeguarding systems against sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. So we have our website. Afterwards, you will see it in the chat so that you can easily go to our website to navigate. There you will see different tools, different resources, evidence, news, and loads and loads of resources really that will help you strengthen your safeguarding systems in Nigeria. Smaller local organizations are our focus, and we have programs now in Africa, 3 countries in Africa: Nigeria, South Sudan, and Ethiopia, and then MENA region, where we have Jordan, Syria, and then also South Asia, where we have Bangladesh and Pakistan. So as we identify major gaps, we look for ways to fill those gaps in collaboration with our partners. Our approaches are through development of resources, mentorship, online training, webinars like this one, and podcasts. So in our webpage, you'll be able to see those resources there. Next, please. All right, so for this webinar, we will talk about these 4 components of safeguarding. So like a brief introduction of safeguarding. What is safeguarding? Really, and then we will move on to assess and plan safeguarding. How do you assess safeguarding issues? How do you assess your organization to see the safeguarding gaps there, and then plan? And then what is needed for safeguarding is the next, and what to do if there is a problem. So when a report is received, what do you do? All right, so that's what our webinar will be covering this morning. Now, what is safeguarding? for RSH, we say safeguarding is an ethical approach and set of practical measures adopted by organizations to promote the safety and well-being of everyone involved in delivery or receipt of humanitarian aid and development assistance, and to protect them as far as possible from all forms of harm, including exploitation, abuse, harassment that might result from their involvement in or contact with the organization. So basically, next slide. Basically, what we are saying is that, we don't want the people that come in contact with us to be harmed in any way. We do not harm people who come in contact. And that is really the fundamental principles of safeguarding. The do no harm principle is the underlying fundamental principle of safeguarding. Now, let's understand what this safeguarding is really. Safeguarding addresses the misuse of power. That is really the fundamental thing there. It's about power dynamics. In an organization, certain people do have more power. It might be based on their position in an organization. It might be based on gender, race, There are different things, education level, ability, disability, social status. All these really are, what keeps people at higher power in an organization. So all these things have a role to play. And then now people with less power are really at greater risk of exploitation and abuse. So like, for example, a manager, a supervisor in an organization, executive director has the utmost power that whatever he or she says really, is law in that organization. So such, is an enormous amount of power that the person holds. Now, making sure that we use that power well is important, and that we are not using that power to the detriment of others. Rather, we are using that power to support and promote people. So, it might even be like relinquishing some of the power to empower those with lesser power. But again, apart from the upranking, those at top management having more power, really everybody that works in an NGO power than, example, in an NGO has more power, because say if you're implementing in the Northeast, for example, and there are loads of distribution, even in development, we do sometimes give some kids, maybe school materials, or whatever. And then a driver is the one conveying these resources to the community. So the community doesn't even know that, oh, this is a driver. Rather, it's like, oh, this person has all these resources. And if this person now doesn't utilize that power and tries to misuse it, then it might, you will see things like, oh, exploiting or trying to get favor. Might be sex, might be money, might be whatever, in exchange for the items and materials they have. So you might say, oh, in the organization hierarchy, this person is a driver and really not, like at, basically I was trying to paint the picture of how everybody working with an NGO really has level of power compared to the communities that we serve. So even though in organizations hierarchy, we have topmost the executive director, maybe the program manager, head of program finance, a driver who is also working with an NGO and carrying, some of the materials for distribution, might also be seen as, having lots of resources by the community. And then if such a person, this driver doesn't utilize that power well, but rather misuses it and abuses it, then that's where such a person can be asking now for money, sex, or anything in exchange for the resources that, he's to offer. Of course, which these resources are supposed to be given free of charge, because, the donor or whoever is funding the project has already paid for these services. But someone now wants to exploit the helplessness and powerlessness of the people in the community. So, basically, safeguarding really is a power issue. So let's move to the next slide. Now there are, no, you've moved too fast. Yeah, there are global sectors standards that support the work we do in safeguarding. There is one we call the DAC recommendation on ending sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment in development cooperation and humanitarian assistance. This actually is targeted to the funders, to the donors, that they have a responsibility to ensure that the programs they fund are not causing further harm. So that is one. And it's also important that you look out for, if your donor, for example, is not funding your safeguarding activities, you need to be able to have a conversation, with them. We have some resources that we've developed that might help you, because really safeguarding is everybody's business. And when we say everybody, it includes the donors as well. So this recommendation, is targeted them so that they too will fund and support, programs that are safe. Then we have the Interagency Standing Committee Minimum Operating Procedures for protection from sexual exploitation and abuse from own personnel. That's the full name of that. So, these interagency minimum standards, enforces that the staff, the volunteers, the consultants, it's not only staff that can actually, cause harm. If volunteers, consultants, contractors, all that you employ in one way or the other can also cause further harm. So really, these standards is really to protect against that sexual exploitation. And then we have core humanitarian standards. This is also more common. But those that work with UN, if you've had any UN-funded projects, I'm sure you must have heard about the PSCA, coming from the Secretary General's bulletin that was out some years back. Now, the core humanitarian standards on quality and accountability also has sections. The 9 standards there, are all revolved around making sure that the work we do are safe and that the people really are the center of what we do. And then keeping children safe standards, this really is focusing on children. So if you're implementing, say, OVC programs, or any children specific programs, then you should look at this, keeping children safe standards. And then the International Labour Organization Convention on Violence and Harassment in the Workplace, because safeguarding really is not just against the people in the community, but also even within organizations, though most times it's being covered by the HR policy. But staff shouldn't harass and sexually exploit, each other. So probably having the manager harassing and exploiting a junior worker, say, or even a volunteer, that is not proper. Now, and how do we assess safeguarding? We have, in RSH, we have some tools we've developed. There is this tool that is the risk assessment and management tool. It's quite robust, it's quite broad, and it provides you with guidance and different categories that you can use to assess your organization safeguarding risk. So it's helpful, of course, to conduct self-assessments regularly, to monitor and measure the progress and update plans, because when you assess, it helps you in making plans so that you know where your gaps are, and then you put in place things that will help you to move forward and mitigate those risks and cover the gaps that have been identified. Right now, you plan for safeguarding after your assessments. So organizations benefit from organization-wide safeguarding plan to continuously improve and maintain safeguarding measures. It's important that you plan for your safeguarding. Remember, the saying that he who fails to plan plans to fail. So really in safeguarding is very important. Some organizations plan to meet international standards, others plan to meet a specific risk, in different departments. So of course, by the time you've done your assessment, then you identify the risk, you identify the gaps, and then you develop plans and measures to help you curtail them. It's important too to clearly budget for safeguarding plans. We also have a resource that we call, integrating safeguarding in proposals, because we notice that that's also an area of gap that people have. They don't know how to integrate safeguarding in proposals. So it's important really to budget for those. Now, what is needed for safeguarding? There are various aspects. Here, everybody is on deck. Everybody is involved. It's everybody's business. So it starts within human resources, programs, partnership, culture, and leadership. Very important. Robust organizational standards show donors that the organization is actively managing safeguarding. Now, many donors really want to see your safeguarding systems. Some will just ask you for policies, but really safeguarding goes just beyond having policy. It's not just that you have your policy, oh, this donor has asked you for policy, and you develop a policy, maybe copy and paste and present it. And afterwards, when the award is received, you forget about that policy and nobody talks about it. Safeguarding should go beyond just meeting donors' requirements. It's not just about compliance, but really about ensuring that the right things are done. And that is where leadership is very important, because it's the leadership that will help to propel and put in place the systems, the structures, and have also the convenient, conducive culture in that organization that will help promote safeguarding. When you have safeguarding and you're trying to promote it, and the culture is not a culture that allows for openness, for transparency, and people are afraid to speak up, then such a culture will actually go against safeguarding. You will not be able to achieve what you are planning in safeguarding. So it's very important. So organization standards should align with international standards set by the aid and development sector. Now, again, let me take it in depth now. In terms of organization, culture, and leadership for what is needed for safeguarding, it's important. Organizations can change their culture through leadership approaches. When leaders show respect and accountability in their relationship with others, they build safer and more effective organizations. So that a leader should mirror what they are promoting. If a leader is saying that, yes, our organization will promote transparency, there is the open door policy where you can come in, stigmatization, favoritism is not encouraged in this organization, then he or she should be able to promote that, and the people working in such an organization will be able to see that, yes, this our leader, this our executive director is really out, even not just the executive director, even to the board of trustees. The theme of culture and leadership, governance and accountability has at its core the need to reflect on power and privilege. We've said it here, power and privilege, it's all about power and privilege. So you need to reflect on that within your organization and the aid sector at large to identify where power lies. So who are those with the power, and how it impacts positively or negatively on your organization and the work you do. Evidence has shown that organizations that are more diverse and inclusive, don't just do better in safeguarding, but also in the quality of the work they do. This our work is really, a humanitarian. If we look at the principles of humanitarian service, really, you will see like independence, you see humanity, so we see impartiality. So really, these are like the principles that we should abide by. And, do no harm, safeguarding is also it's integrated in this. And for us really to be able to do well in this work we are doing, then we should make sure that safeguarding is entrenched, everywhere in our organization. Next slide. Now, what again is needed for safeguarding? Policies is important, yes, because the policy, puts it on black and white, what the organization stands for and what the organization doesn't stand for. When anything goes wrong, you will get back to that, your policy. It's your policy that will help you to make a decision on what to do, in that situation. So that policy is important. And then code of conduct. Code of conduct stipulates now the expected behaviors of staff and representatives. And then, of course, they are expected, everybody is expected to sign onto the code of conduct and said, yes, as I'm working in this organization, I agree to the code of conduct that is stipulated by the organization. Next slide. Now, the other one is what is needed for safeguarding is about communication, learning, and development. It doesn't stop by just people signing code of conduct and policies. No, we need to do more. People need to understand what they are signing on to. So it's important that staff, volunteers, contractors, everybody, associated with the organization, even the security guard that is probably even contracted by another agency, because they are related, because they are part of the organization, at least for the period that they are working, should be taken through what the organization means by safeguarding, what is expected by them, so they need to understand this. And then the community too, you need to also constantly sensitize the communities on what your organization stands for. So you have your field staff, you have even your volunteers, everybody should be singing the same. In whatever community entry meeting you're having, whatever community training you're having, whatever, you use those opportunities to talk about safeguarding so that the community members and your beneficiaries understand what is expected of them, what to also expect from your staff, and what not to expect. So they know that, look, for this, whatever services we are providing for you is free. It's been paid for, it's free. So if anybody asks you to pay money or to give in sex or any other thing, please know that this is not, from us. Let them know it. Really now we are having, different reports from different, angles, different organizations that have gone down because, of safeguarding concerns. So it's important that we really put our house in order and do the things that we need to do. Next slide. Now, again, what is needed for safeguarding, quite intense, integrate it into relevant units of the organization. Human resources, we have a resource tool on our online hub, with how to integrate safeguarding in HR. So through that employee life cycle, we have it there. And please, the links will be made available so that you click on these resources and help your organization. Also, safe programming, we have the program management cycle. Safeguarding should be embedded all through the program management cycle, from baseline or assessment to design, to implementation and monitoring. You have to integrate safeguarding all through that. We also have a resource on safe programming that you can also get back to. Media and communications. So here, your data protection, pictures, you have to, you're taking pictures of people, you have to be with dignity and consent. And, of course, all sensitive files should be under lock and key data protection. And you don't just go about taking pictures for anybody, but sign consent. It's important. one thing with consent, it's not so easy, you know. I've learned that, you know, it's sometimes we got consent, but sometimes it's not so easy to get consent, because that person that gave consent can as well come to me and say, I'm withdrawing, and they have every right to withdraw their consent. So that means somewhere in your policy, your communication policy or safeguarding policy, communication part, we have to show that yes, people can withdraw, but then you have to make it clear to them that, look, if the consent, if the pictures were used for communication materials promotion, that you can stop using it, you know, at the point where they withdraw their consent, but you cannot ascertain how far it's gone in the past when, you know, their consent was given. And then of course that you took somebody's picture and got consent for that picture doesn't mean that you can use that picture, you know, to do anything. You have to still seek consent, you know, when at the point of using that picture, so that the person understands really what you want to do with the pictures. Is very important. And then of course, fundraising, I've mentioned that, you know, integrate safeguarding in proposals. Like I mentioned, the link is available, and that will be shared via the chat. Now, what do you do when there is a problem? It's important to set up whistleblowing systems. Yesterday I was in a meeting where we were talking about how do we protect whistleblowers? Do we really have enough system to ensure that, you know, people who report are protected? And we know in Nigeria, that's one challenge we're having, that people don't want to report because they don't trust the system, you know, and they feel that they're endangered if they report now, and the perpetrator, whom we've identified, would be somebody that is, you know, high up in whatever way, you know, might do anything to, you know, against this person when they find out that this is the person that really reported it. So we need to make sure that we have systems to really protect whistleblowers. That's where confidentiality comes in. In safeguarding, it is key. Confidentiality is key. You cannot do away, you know, with it. So all the people involved in that should really be people of integrity that will not just open their mouth and, you know, talk about this, and because they are really sensitive. And if confidentiality is breached, it's also putting the people involved in that investigation at risk, because the perpetrator might, you know, do anything to them. But when you follow it sequentially, we also have a resource that we've developed about how to manage investigations. It doesn't take you through how to ask the questions and that, because you need to be trained, but really it provides you with risk management tool, with TOR, if you want to get in an external consultant, and you know, with the tip sheet on how to prepare for and manage investigations. Let's go to the next slide. Now, community-based reporting mechanism is yet another that needs to be in place, and you cannot just develop this. It has to be with the community. You know, you don't just develop it, you know, whatever it is, you bring complaints boxes, yeah, and then tomorrow they are seeing complaint boxes. They don't understand what they're to do with complaint boxes. Or you just put phone, you say, oh, this is phone number too. They don't understand. But so you need to sit down with them, you see, like, you know, the picture, discuss with them, what would they appreciate? How would they want to report concerns? And, you know, they can give you different views. And remember, again, intersectionality is very important. A girl who is living with disability might have separate challenges to just any girl child, you know, and, you know, so you need to consider those sections, boys, girls, yes, but also people with intersectionality, minority, race, tribe. In our case, it might be tribe, you know. So you put in those things in place to ensure, try to carry everybody along as much as possible, you know. But really, the rule of thumb for setting up reporting mechanisms is to have as diverse methods as possible, because what works, it is not a one size fits all kind of process. Next, please. Now, what to do when there's a problem? Case management. now, like the process of handling the case. And reports received must be handled in line with organizational procedures. Survivor-centered management process must be ensured. Here, the survivor really is the expert. But again, survivor-centered, has to be with integrity as well, because sometimes organizations will hide behind survivor-centered and not do anything. So the survivor, again, needs to be provided with counseling, psychosocial support, emotional, support to help the person through that process. Trauma counseling is very important. Referring a case to national authorities for criminal prosecution by the time maybe you finished your own investigation, if you have the capacity. And if it's a criminal case, then you can now refer where it's safe to do so. Yeah, remember that survivors' rights, needs, and wishes must be prioritized in everything. Administrative investigations to be conducted by trained investigators. So when we say administrative investigator, we mean like what the organizations conduct to try to find out what really happened and whether it's a breach of their policy. So if there is a breach of their policy, then they handle the case based on what their policy says. But that doesn't mean that the person, if it's a criminal case, then it needs to be reported, to the national authorities, police, NAPTIP, depending on what the case is. The safety and protection of everyone involved in safeguarding cases is extremely important. It's extremely important. Yeah. So the key things to remember along the safeguarding journey that we've taken you through: safeguarding is about keeping people safe and addressing harm that has been caused by organization staff or associates misusing their power. We've said this over and over. So it's about keeping people safe from misuse of power caused by staff or other representatives. Sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment can happen in any organization, anywhere. Don't think that, because your own is a faith-based organization, everybody is like carrying church or mosque mind. It doesn't work that way. It can happen. So by the time you have it in the back of your mind that it can actually happen here, then you just make sure that all things are put in place. Organizations need to understand where power lies, and leaders need to create a culture of respect and accountability. It starts with the leaders. Organizations need to regularly assess themselves against the standards and then develop the mitigation measures. To address safeguarding incidents, organizations need accessible systems that all staff, associates, and people in communities can access. So your reporting mechanism should be accessible, and you have clear case management procedures and investigations. So let me just end by also encouraging us to be open and try to handle our safeguarding reports. Sometimes we try to play the ostrich and think that if we don't say it out, then nobody will know. And, because we think that when people know about it, then donors, will not fund us again. But the contrary is the case, because by the time you keep, covering it, then it gets to the point that by the time it comes out, if donors wouldn't want to have anything to do with it. But if you're clear, if you're transparent, put down the things you have done, to ensure you will prevent it. And then when it happens, what are the steps you've taken? And that's also where RSH comes in at this point, to support you, to help you through that journey, so that we make sure that your organizations are safe for everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Oge, for that very illuminating presentation. You've provided us an overview of safeguarding, including sexual exploitation, abuse, and harassment. Thank you for, taking us on that journey, talking about our HR system and what is needed if we have a problem, the potential risks, that the survivor is at the center of what we do. We must carry everyone along, and the need for trained investigators. Let's now go to questions that have been posed by our esteemed attendees. I see a question. Thank you, Samira Farouk. Samira Farouk says, should our child protection and safeguarding policy be separate from our main safeguarding policy of our organization? Samira says that they work with children, women, and youth. Okay, please.
Thank you, Samira, for that question. For me, I'm not a fan of having several different policies because it can be quite confusing, you know. So, but I believe, you know, because I don't understand when you say, I don't understand when you say that you have your child safeguarding policy, you have your safeguarding policy, and then you have your main safeguarding policy. So basically, you need to have one major policy on safeguarding, and then there you can have a section on how to deal with children, you know, so that will cover your child safeguarding policy. So really having everything as one document works better.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Samira, for that question. The next question, Oge, is from Freki Andrew Essien. And Freki says, is child protection and child safeguarding different? That is more like a follow-up question to Samira's question. What is the difference between child protection and child safeguarding? No,
okay, Dr. Elena, I think the last question was around what's the difference between child protection and safeguarding policy. I really don't want to say child safeguarding, it's still the same, but let's move beyond child to everyone so that it covers everyone. All right, so initially, well, when this issue of safeguarding started, people that are running protection programs, you know, combine it to say, okay, for child protection, especially for child protection. But now we are moving away from protection because there is a difference between safeguarding and protection. So even though, yes, what you might have as your child protection policy might have the same similar information as what safeguarding will be, but there is a difference between child protection and safeguarding. So protection really is about harm that is done to children, you know, or anybody, like even GBV, in the community. So that is protection. So you are protecting children, for example, from harm done by community, you know, in the community where they live. So, and also the same thing with GBV, you know, it's in the families, in the community where they live. But safeguarding really is about the harm done by the organization. So this harm done by organization can be done by organization staff or other representatives like volunteers, consultants, or it can be done by the programs. If the way they design their programs is not safe, you know, that might, you know, cause harm, and that is safeguarding concern. But protection, you know, it's about what happens in the community. So I hope with that is clear. So if you have child protection policy, I will encourage you to move away from protection and call it safeguarding. That is really what it is now, you know, so that it's about your staff, you know, making sure that they are not doing harm to the communities and the children that you serve.
Thank you for that clarification, Oge. In the few remaining minutes, we have two other questions. Freki, to let you know that yes, you will have access to the tools in the presentation. The presentation will be shared, and in the chat function, we will also put our website details again. Freki goes on to ask, how does one handle where a photo is a required mode of verification by a donor and beneficiaries do not give their consent? And I will ask you kindly, Oge, to follow on quickly with the question also from Ojonemile VB John. How does one go about developing a safeguarding plan? So if I can request you to take those two questions as we come to the end of the time for the webinar, please.
Thank you. So in terms of photo, if the beneficiary is not giving consent, you cannot use that picture, sorry. So what you can do is to try to let them understand why it's important to have their picture, that is so that, you know, you'll be able to show to your donor that you are actually doing this, you know. But if they say no, you cannot forcefully take picture. No, you cannot. So you might want to explain to your donor. And of course, maybe there are also different beneficiaries. If A is saying no, then maybe you can use B and B might say yes, you know, and just let them understand why and how it will be used, that it's not going to be publicized, you know. If you're not going to publicize it, really, that is just to the donor, who will also handle it confidentially, and that other identifying marks will not be put, so that you don't put them at further risk. So that is that, you know, explaining the data protection and how their pictures will be stored and all that might allay their fears, and they will be able to give consent, but not to forcefully give it.
Thank you, okay. So there's the question from John on developing a safeguarding plan. And I will please ask Ifoma Moloku, who has her hand raised, to please write her question in the Q&A or in the chat so that we can take your question. Please, over to you, Oge.
So for the safeguarding plan, quickly, there is that risk assessment and management tool that I mentioned. Sylvia is also putting it up in the link here now. You can use that to assess the risk and then develop your mitigation plan. So you can use it as a way of planning. Then if you also need more support, you know, we also have services that you can use to reach out to us, which Dr. Eleanor is going to share with us shortly. And then you can use that to reach us, and then we'll provide further support. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Ifoma Moloku, if you still have your question, please do put it in the chat. But really, that's all we have time for today. Thank you again, Oge, for your informative presentation, and to, you know, those of you who were very engaging and, you know, for your engaging and challenging questions. We will shortly be sharing a poll with you. Please do complete it, as it helps us to tailor our services to suit you and to continue to improve on the events we deliver. We will be sharing the webinar recording and slides with you shortly, as well as other related resources. For assistance specific to your NGO on implementing safeguarding, do access our Ask an Expert service. You can find the link also in the chat. I will now call on my co-chair, Mr. Timothy Odion, to make the closing remarks. Thank you all, and hope to connect with you again soon. Over to you, Mr. Timothy Odion.
Thank you, Dr. Eleanor, for that. And I must say a very big thank you to Oge for that presentation. And let me also mention that on behalf of the network, on behalf of members of the network, we really appreciate you putting in place this webinar. No doubt, members in the network have learned a lot from the webinar. They've seen where they can make improvements in the areas that they deal with, the common one, and also in supporting others for the good. No doubt, I was listening with keen interest when you were making that difference between child rights and safeguarding, and calling to all members that we do not just want to have a system in place, we want to have a workable system that all, from a board of directors down to even the security, as we had in that presentation, will be part and parcel of, and also we look for ways by which they can access those information and understand those information that are in the system of policies that we have put in place. I must say, Safeguarding 101 it has come to pass, and by saying 101, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, we might still have other maybe 102, 103 presentation webinar coming up in the future, and I'm very sure that members will look forward to similar webinar in the future. So this is how we'll be calling it a day here. Thank you, Dr. Elena Makosia, and then also the present Oge, for that wonderful presentation. And to all our members, all our participants, we very much appreciate the time. We very much appreciate you making this presentation. Thank you, and bye from my hand there.